Welcome in, everyone. That seemed to be like a pretty, just, I don't know, like.
It's like a classic kicker.
Yeah, classic. Not much to say about that one.
No.
Again, if you're listening on Spotify, you don't know what we're talking about. But if you're joining us on YouTube, first of all, you can see the background that I have, and you love that. I know you love that. And then you got to see us with the slow roll, the countdown come in. So a lot of advantages to YouTube. That's my preferred method of consuming the podcast. But what about you, Keifer? Where do you get your Unscrupulousness podcast?
Well, I never watch these.
Neither. I don't.
I have no desire.
We hit submit, and that's it.
And then it may post, but I sometimes hope it doesn't.
Yeah.
No, I typically get my podcast from Apple Podcasts, but I will say that they're sorry, I was just editing our text things. They're on Spotify. You can have a video function. So if somebody opens it up on Spotify because I download these as MP4 formats, so they do carry their videos. So you can technically see the video on Spotify, though I don't know anybody who does. Who's not a psychopath.
Sam, I know, is a big Spotify guy. He might. That's interesting. Anyways, I didn't even welcome us in. So welcome in, everyone, to the Unscrupulousness podcast. This is your host, Jake Curtis, and with me, as always, Keifer Walsh, Dr. Walsh. Happy week 15. That's crazy. Where did the time go? The fantasy season is almost over. Week 15 also happens to be week 2 of the first round of the playoffs, and that's certainly what we are going to be discussing this episode is playoffs. Cue the Jim Mora.
Playoffs?
And if you're not watching, you don't know if we hit the button or if that was Jim Mora or if that was us. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. All right. I don't think this is going to be a super long episode because we've sort of skimmed it down. We will talk about the consolation bracket, but we're not going to give it a whole lot of time because it doesn't deserve that. We are going to stay.
Ned and Garrett were probably about to just close out of their Spotify.
Yeah,
you said that.
No, never mind.
Oh, okay. I'll stick around.
I've heard enough. I'm not going to stick around. I think that this might be our first ever playoff podcast. Is that right? I think last year we both of us maybe missed the playoffs and just didn't see the point in recording. So we didn't have a playoff episode last year. Sorry, Sam. And now Sam is, I guess we only do it when Sam's not in the playoffs. How about that?
Right. Yeah. That'll be the tradition going forward. If Sam makes the playoffs, then we will turn off the microphones.
Oh, goodness. All right. Exciting news for Sam, however. He is joining me in Saudi Arabia next year to work for Saudi Aramco as well. So we will have 3 owners. Is that right? 3 owners in Saudi Arabia.
You'll have an Eastern consortium.
Working for Saudi Aramco. So we're thrilled about that. Very excited to have.
When does that start?
That'll be next year. So he'd be.
Is that prior to the season starting?
So July.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we're excited. He's gonna be where we were last year. So he'll be in Dhahran, which is about 3 hours. No, excuse me, 2 hour and a half, 2 hours away from where we are. So that is what it is. But at least he'll be close by.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Anyways, let's jump right into it. Let's start off with the winners bracket. Let's start off with the 1-4 matchup. Dan 7-6 regular season, Jake 8-5 regular season. Number 1 seed versus the number 4 seed. Week 14 result, first round of this matchup. Dan scored 247, Jake 262. So neither blowing the points off the board kind of game, but sort of held true to my average, and Dan achieved just a bit. And so yeah, that was the week in review. Any thoughts about the week 14 results?
I think, well, I would say honestly, a little underwhelming for you. I think you probably hoped to have a little
100%.
cushion, right?
Yeah.
And Dan did
Yeah,
pretty
I mean, you want to bury the team. You want to bury them so deeply that the week 2 matchup. But I didn't. I left the door open. The door is wide open for me to lay an egg and Dan to sneak in, or for Dan to have a 300-point matchup, a 300-point week, and for me not to be able to score enough points. So, I mean, Saquon got 30. Brock Purdy got 21. That was really frustrating. Bijan got 47. DJ Moore continues to go off.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice is getting a ton of looks. So, sort of, not a huge game for Dan, but he certainly had, I mean, obviously Justin Jefferson going out in the second quarter hurt him significantly, 4.7 out of that slot. But like you look through it, it's not a horrible game. His defense didn't really show up. I mean, the difference might be Brandon Aubrey getting 23 points for me. That's about how much I beat him by, right? So, sort of a similar. Now I got 18 points combined out of my quarterbacks. That was just absolutely ball busting. Like Tua hasn't started for me since like week 7, and so for him to come out and give me 8 points, obviously that's personal. That's personal. That's what he was looking forward. He'd circle this on the calendar, said, I'm going to lay an egg here. And that's what he did. Jalen Hurts getting 10 against Dallas. That's his worst game of the season, I believe. I think he might have scored 8 in week 1 against the Patriots. Nope, 14 and a half. So by far his worst game, and that's, to be expected against this Dallas defense. So I had some missed opportunities.
How about for Dan, Younghoe Koo missed 2 50-yard field goals. Yep. That's a 12-point swing.
Yep, that's a 12-point swing, and he was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. And we talked about that on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. We talked about Brandon Aubrey. All he needs to do is kick about 75 more field goals to be at 100% with a minimum of 100 kicks. Right. So, I mean, they had the opposite day. They were playing at the same time. I was watching both of those games. It was really interesting to see those kickers have similar kicks but different outcomes. Again, doesn't need to be said because we talked about it in the group, but Brandon Aubrey hit a 60-yarder. Okay, so he got 6 points for that. Then he was set up for I believe it was another 60-yarder, and Dallas ran the ball on third down to give him some more space. They got 2 yards. So it brought it to a 58-yard field goal, knocks that through. And then I think he had a 53-yard. No, 59. So it must have been a 61-yard field goal. They ran 2 yards, and it ended up being a 59-yard field goal, 60-yard field goal, and then another one over 50. I can't find it, but 3 field goals past 50, and then one for short range 45. I mean, it's just what he's doing it's unbelievable.
Yeah, he might be in contention for your team's MVP at the end of the year. I mean, how do you deny perfection?
Yeah. And again, when I drafted him, we've talked about this at length, but didn't even have a biopic until like week 5.
Right.
So,
it was
and
just
obviously
a soccer ball.
Right. No one was after him in the draft. I think I put up like 4 or 5 kickers in the draft that were all drafted for $2.
Yeah.
No one was touching Brandon Aubrey.
Nope.
So
yeah,
steal of a pick there. Anyways, let's move on the kickers. Cam Johnston did get 7 points.
He did.
Which would have been great had Bryce Behringer not got also 7 points. So battle of the punters there.
Yeah, he's Cameron Johnston's still the 29th punter. Just having missed his 5 games. But I was trying to think of my deal that I made, and maybe I'll have to go back and run the tapes, but was the deal that if Dan wins this season, I buy him a Cam Johnston jersey?
Gosh, what was it? I felt like it was a lower bar.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. Yeah, if he makes the playoffs, I wouldn't have said that, would I?
I
We'll
don't
have to
know.
look. Because it's getting a little real. And if I have to start figuring out how to buy a Cam Johnston jersey, then
It's not going to be easy. You're probably going to have to do one of those customized jerseys, writing your own name
for an actual player.
Yeah. Now I did want to bring this one thing up. I've talked ad nauseum. Everyone's tired of me talking about it, about the trade trademarked that sort of sank me mid-season, right? And every week I've looked at this trade, and every week Ned has gotten the benefit of that trade, and I've lagged behind. Now Kittle did have a big game. He did score a touchdown. I don't know his overall score. He might have gotten the 15 to 20 range. So that might change things. However, this week, Ramondre Stevenson did not play on Thursday.
Right.
Aaron Jones did not play on Thursday. So I would have gone into the week with a healthy Christian McCaffrey and Jerome Ford. And then I would have probably played Roschon Johnson coming out of the bye because he started to get a lot more snaps the week before the bye. Figured that they would lean on the rookie to finish out the year. He got 1.2 points. So Derrick Henry scored twice, got 21. So that's a 20-point swing right there.
Yeah.
And Gerald Everett, who I would have played in Kittle's place, got 8.9. So can you tell me how much Kittle got me, or Kittle got Ned?
Sure can. I was just looking at Tyjae Spears because you may have ended up having to play him, and he's had 220.
Well, I wouldn't have had him.
Right, that's true.
If the trade hadn't gone through, I wouldn't.
I guess
have had him.
Ned may have played him. Kittle last week he had 16.6.
Yeah, see, there you go. So that's a 7-point swing there at tight end. And then just humor me, Roquan Smith.
Roquan Smith last week, 12.5.
Yeah, so Robert Spillane scored 16.5. So probably this week, first week since the trade, a better trade.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be curious at the end of the year to go back and really get into it. And obviously there are a lot of factors that go into it, like, who you would have played instead of, et cetera, et cetera. But if Derrick Henry continues to be productive and Kittle levels back out, because Kittle had 3 catches. He's had 3, 4, and 3 catches. He's just a big play guy.
That's what he does. That is what he does. That's what he does. It's like against Dallas, he had 3 catches for 3 touchdowns, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to
Derrick
see.
Henry, 2 touchdowns each game, last 3 games, 2-2-2. Yeah. Last game he averaged 2 yards a carry, so really needed those touchdowns. But we'll see.
We will.
All right.
I think maybe next episode we'll have a deliverable of some numbers and look at the trades and see where it stands.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. But moving forward this week, obviously the week that's going to decide it, I do not have a big enough lead for this to be. This is going to be a close matchup. It's going to be a close matchup, and I think we were talking in the production meeting. There's injuries. Every single team right now is dealing with injuries. I think Tom might be in the best shape. I might be up there as well because I think my guys are going to play. And if they don't, Jerome Ford isn't that much of a decrease to Aaron Jones, the numbers he's been putting up. It does get fishy with Tyreek Hill, and we talked about that in our meeting as well. So I've got Aaron Jones, Tyreek Hill, and Darren Waller, who are all questionable to play. Hill did not practice all week. Aaron Jones got limited sessions in, and Waller got 1 limited in. So all of them, to varying degrees of questionable. Here's where it gets dicey. Hill did not practice all week. I am carrying 1 wide receiver on my bench, and that is Brandon Cooks, who also has not practiced this week. He's dealing with an illness. And although Mike McCarthy said he's not terribly worried about Brandon Cooks' availability, he hasn't practiced all week. Tyreek hasn't practiced all week. There is a possibility that I might have a 0 for my wide receiver 3 if the chips fall the way Dan wants them to.
And what a referendum on ownership that will be.
Yeah, it'll be.
I hope it doesn't come to that.
Uh,
I think this is going to be both. We're going to talk about both these winners bracket matchups, and they're both exciting. I think they're going to both come down to the wire. We talked a little bit about this before, but Dan has Justin Jefferson back, but in a shaky spot, and the number 2 overall tight end TJ Hawkinson. So both of those guys are going to rely on Nick Mullins this week, which is pretty scary. Dan ended up starting Taysom Hill at tight end 2 over Dalton Kincaid. So I think that's a smart move. And then, we looked at Rashee Rice, and he's had almost 10 targets a game for the past 3 weeks, but he is deciding to start him over Puka Nacua at wide receiver 3. So those are some big calls for big moments.
Some big calls. Yeah. Calls I haven't had to make all year.
Right. True. Dan has had to really fight his way against us, I think, for one, doubting him, but also against some injuries all year. So it would be a bit of poetic justice if he could pull off a come from behind win, making some big calls this week.
And of course, Taysom Hill was on my roster this year, and I dropped him. And boy, would he be playing for me, no doubt about that, in place of Cade Otton.
Yeah.
So
the other thing that's exciting about this matchup is that you both have some players on Monday night, which I always enjoy when games come down to it. So you got Jalen Hurts on Monday night, and Dan's got a defensive back and a kicker on Monday night. So it could end up being one of those back and forth type situations. You hope not, but it certainly could.
Yeah, and again, Jalen Hurts playing Seattle in Seattle, so that could be an interesting matchup. Eagles need a big bounce back after getting their face punched in. Did you hear the sound clip of DeMarcus Lawrence?
No.
I'll find that for you. You lead us to the next matchup while I.
Okay, let me reset here. So matchup 2. The one we've all honestly been excited about all year is the brother bowl, but this time we're phrasing it a brother brawl. Because we've got Tim, the number 2 seed, 8-5, going on the road, just down the road, to face his brother Thomas, who's 7-6 regular season. So last week, a bit of a stinker for Thomas, despite his health, and Tim got an early lead by nearly 52 points, 249 to 197. So imagine starting out week 2 of round 1 at a 50-point deficit, and how are you going to find those points? And it actually looks like he might. So projection's not as close at the beginning, but after Thursday night's game, it's like a 20-point game.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So obviously the total points projected for both of our matchups, both of the winner brackets matchup, is separated by 10 points. Isn't that's remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Because in week 1, Tim won by damn near 60 points. And so but again, if you look at his roster, the averages for the guys he's starting, I think it's like 250 points. So he's got some injuries at key positions. Keenan Allen is down.
Josh Jacobs was out.
Josh Jacobs was out on Thursday. And so 2 of the guys that made him the second best overall team in the league, those are his 2 best players. So again, Thomas needed a break, and he certainly got one with those 2 guys getting out.
I was talking. So we were looking at Devontae Adams putting up 24 points, and I was talking to him during the Thursday night game. And unfortunately, in his other league, he's playing against somebody who had Devontae Adams. So he said it was a bittersweet moment cheering for Devontae and all those catches. So he's in a situation where he might find himself out of the playoffs because of Devontae Adams, or continuing in the playoffs because of Devontae Adams.
That's why I'm a one league man.
Yeah, I know.
I want to feel
it really makes things complicated.
I just want one emotion, either heartbreak or euphoria.
Right. Just put me on one roller coaster at a time.
Yeah,
that
was a Billy Joel reference. It's either heartbreak or euphoria. Did you not catch that?
No.
Turnstile.
Hopefully our listeners did, though. That's good.
Anyways, take a listen to this soundbite.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? You can't hear that?
Uh-uh.
All right, so I'll have to play it from my phone. This is DeMarcus Lawrence getting asked by the media how they were able to beat the Eagles so handedly, and this was his response.
Hit a motherfucker in the face over and over and over and over again until they quit. And when they quit, hit them again and again and again and again. Hit a motherfucker in the face.
Well, they did that. That's for sure.
So they aired that on ESPN. That was a clip from ESPN. They aired it. They did not censor the mother effer, and so the national news heard that loud and clear. So that's all you got to do. You just got to hit the mother effer in the face over and over and over again, and then when they quit, keep hitting them.
Yeah, and then hit him again.
Yeah. And then hit him again.
Incredible.
I love that guy. So that's Tim. That's what Tim's going to try to do. You know, he's going to hit the mother effer in the face again and again and again, and then when Thomas throws in the towel, he's going to hit him again.
Right. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. We talked about come from behind decisions that make or break an owner with your matchup, and Dan and Thomas, just granted because of injuries, is in the same position. Now Justin Herbert's on IR. He's actually starting. Listen to this. So Etienne, who's a top 3 running back, we'll get to later, but he's starting Zach Moss and Zeke as his other 2 running backs this week. Is that not insane to be in the playoffs?
That is insane. That is insane. I did not realize that. That is absolutely insane. And so, what is the condition of Ramondre Stevenson?
I think he's been declared out.
Because Zeke is projected 23 points, so he must be. Now, is Zach Moss the starter? Jonathan Taylor's not playing either?
Correct. Jonathan Taylor's out at least another week.
So those 2 are not horrible plays. However, Zach Moss, 19 carries against Tennessee, 2.7 yards a carry, 13 carries next week against the Bengals, 2.2 yards a carry. He simply has not been the running back who scored 50 points back in week 5, averaging 7.2 yards a carry. He's been hit or miss, and a lot more miss than really hit. And so you love that he's getting the touches, and against a Pittsburgh Steelers defense that hasn't been able to stop the run all year, you know. But again, he's in a position where what is he going to do? Kenneth Walker III is healthy,
right? I think that's a big play. I mean, he's got a tough matchup against the Eagles on a Monday night, a primetime game, but that's the biggest call I think this week. And I guess if you look back at Kenneth Walker, he's had a couple stinkers, but he's been dealing with some health issues. So I think the big call this week is the fact that Thomas is sticking with Zach Moss and Zeke over Kenneth Walker III and his beloved Seahawks. Problem is this Colts offense with Gardner Minshew is just such a question mark because they just haven't been able to utilize Zach Moss in the passing game like they were earlier in the season. And it's just like the Gardner Minshew show, and there's really no other functional piece of the offense. So it's hard to rely on the running back one.
Yes, but the other functioning part of the offense is who Thomas also has is Michael Pittman Jr., who has been sensational since Gardner Minshew took over. And so interesting. And then again, Josh Allen, QB number 1 overall in the league, facing the Dallas Cowboys defense. Interesting matchup there. It's at home, which is good because Dallas has been unbeatable at their house. And so they're playing this game in Buffalo. But that's going to be an interesting game, certainly with a lot of implications there for our first round, second week matchups.
It's gonna be a fun one. I don't know. I don't know if we're making picks in this one, but
no. I think Tim. It's really difficult. It's really difficult to go against the person who already has such a big lead. It's 52 points. Is that correct?
It looks like
249 to 197.
Yeah. Now 250 now after Thursday night, 253 to 229.
Yeah.
So 24 points.
Yeah. ESPN's got that projected Tim to win by 40. So, and again, ESPN has me projected to win by 29.
And
I
after
have
Thursday
Dan
night,
in our matchup, by the way. Officially, I have Dan. I think Dan's going to win. I
Okay.
put that into the universe there. You have chosen me.
I have chosen you, yeah. But I'm hoping for a good game. It looks like after Thursday night, Tim and Tom is down to 26 points.
Wow.
So it's going to be fun. Now, I do have to stick with my original notion from episode 1, the draft recap episode, where I did pick Tim as the most talented and most exciting roster. I think the most talented. I don't think I gave him the most exciting roster, but so.
And I've been shitting on Tim and Dan all year long, and it looks like I'm going to have to beat both of them to win the championship. So it's fantasy is a cruel mistress.
And this potentially sets up for Tim to make it to his second consecutive championship in 2 years of ownership ever. Yeah. And obviously that's never happened in this league, where you come into the league and you make the championship 2 years in a row.
I think Chase did it.
Yeah, I believe that.
Know, if there's anyone who has a record that involves making it to the finals and losing, it's Chase Orr.
That's true. That is true.
So
incredible.
No, I do think that I faced him in the first ever. I remember that. I remember we watched that game together, and that was a bad idea. That was, in hindsight, that was a bad idea. We should not have watched those games together. And then I think in year 2, you might have been the one in the championships, in the championship round. But anyways,
yikes.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a peek at the consolation?
Let's do briefly.
Yeah. Let's not linger, but let's take a peek.
Sam.
How about this one? So Sam and I in a matchup here where Sam put up 327 points last week. And I don't know if you saw, I mean, I certainly didn't expect you to, but I don't know if you saw our game last week, but I was projected to score about 197 or 198 points. But then in that last game, I don't remember who it was that went off for me, but I made it look a little cleaner.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly. I think it was Mostert had a pretty big game. And then Max Crosby ended up having like 25 points.
Mostert scored 32. Yeah.
Certainly helps.
Well, it was the first ever, right? Flex the 2 Monday Night Football games at the same time.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of players, specifically for me, that played in that Monday night game. And I think I was projected to beat Tim by like 60 points, or excuse me, Dan. It was supposed to be a big margin. Dan was also only supposed to score like 200.
Well, so Saquon was playing at that on Monday night.
Yeah.
And then your Dolphins were playing on Monday night. So
correct.
That's what happened. Yep. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see any of the Dolphins game because I was watching the Packers drop a ball to Tommy Cutlets. But yeah, I hated the dual Monday night game. I think that was one of the worst ideas in NFL history. Just do back to back or something, or overlap them somehow.
There's no rhyme or reason.
No. But anyways, we were texting back and forth that night that aren't you guys lucky that Sam is not in the playoffs? Because Sam is, and the projections have probably changed, but he is projected to score nearly 600 points. I think he's dropped down to 580 in this 2-week spread, which would be good enough to beat every single person in the league. And so he almost timed this thing out perfectly. But unfortunately, Dan won and Sam lost 2 weeks ago to launch Dan into the playoffs. So Sam's on a tear, and it's all for naught, unfortunately. Yep. But I think he is going to be winning this round and heading on to the championship of the consolation ladder.
Yeah, well, he is who we thought he was, and he let him off the hook.
He let himself off the hook.
Yeah, so it's tough. No, and
I will say,
really interesting game here for him because he had one guy score over 30. Lamar Jackson had 38, but other than that, everyone was just scoring 20. Just great games from everyone. Good games from everyone. Not great for anyone besides Lamar Jackson.
Yeah. Well, so Lamar Jackson obviously doing what he's doing, but go back and look at Joe Mixon if we're going to do some trade reviews. Joe Mixon is currently the 6th best running back, and I traded him. I think it was week 7, and all he did was score 28 or more points in 5 of 8 of his games, or something like that. He's putting up. He is a serviceable running back 1, running back 2.
Oh yeah.
So I was bad call there. I think we should. We'll have to do a little trade autopsies at the end of the season and see.
No doubt.
See if I traded myself out.
All right, so let's take a look at the Garrett at Ned. We're calling this the bestest newest owner consolation pennant. So it could also be known as the battle for the worst newest owner. So who's the battle for the worst? The battle to the
matter
bottom.
Of perspective, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it depends on how you look at it.
This is potentially the most thrilling matchup if anybody's still paying attention.
But good Lord, is this not? No one's surprised that Ned scored 245, Garrett scored 238 here. This is what we expected from the bottom barrel playoff matchup. But it's going to be a nail biter. Currently 240 to 244. So it's getting closer. It's getting tighter.
I don't know if Ned's going to – so we're talking about injuries. I don't know if Ned's going to have a team. You should go look at his roster. He has no quarterbacks right now. He has seriously. Kenny Pickett's out. Josh Dobbs is benched. Stroud is doubtful, and then he has an empty slot for the 4th. So he might. I don't think he's going to start a quarterback this week.
Oh my God!
And
he has 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks on his roster. None of them are 3. Excuse me, 3.
Yeah,
3 QBs on his roster. None of them are playing.
Nobody's playing. And look at his running backs. He's got. So James Cook and Kyron Williams are playing. Robinson Jr. is projected out. Madison is out. Ramondre Stevenson is out. Kenneth Gainwell is going to be his RB3.
Yeah, if he plays him,
he's dealing with it. If he gets him in the lineup.
But then take a look at Garrett's bench. Doubtful, question, out, question. And he's got 2 guys on IR. So, and he's got 2 empty bench slots. So
yeah,
this is what we came for. This is the matchup that everyone's gonna eyes glued to their TVs watching this one. Riveting stuff here. He's got Grant Delpit starting in his starting lineup. He's on IR, folks.
Oh my gosh, it gets ugly. I mean, I don't blame him for not paying attention anymore at this point. But you want to finish strong. I mean, you don't want to come in last. Honestly, the fact that they are both put up 240 points with their rosters in this condition is commendable.
Yeah.
I mean, they both may outscore me, and I've got a full roster. But this is fun. But prior to Thursday night, this was a 3-point game coming down to the end of it. So I might be keeping my eye on this one, seeing how it goes.
I can't wait. Now I'll let you sort of start us off here, but I will. This is exciting. This is sort of season in review. Keifer went ahead and did the legwork. Not easy to do since he did it a week late, so he had to subtract numbers from last week's matchups to find out the regular season position ranks for quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, linebackers, all the way through to punters. And so I'll let him take it over from here.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I did. A lot of subtraction. I think eventually in the postseason, when we start missing fantasy football again and looking for things to do, I'll put together something about a whole season in review. But I want to look at the regular season in review.
Yeah.
And potentially what I'll do is I'll flash this up real quick.
Isn't there at the end of the season there's a way to look at your roster and see how many points each player scored for you? So they don't count any points unless they're in your starting roster. Do you remember that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. I think there is that function that you can see. Yes.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, exactly. I was just saying so basically you will see what production they had only for you as a starter.
Yeah. Now, I just clicked on, I put my cursor over league and went to rosters. And so now I'm in the league rosters page, and they have everyone's roster, starting lineup, and bench. And in the right-hand column, how you acquired them. And so that's an interesting little tidbit.
Take a look at Dan's.
Because again, you look at Dan and/or Ned, who essentially rebuilt his team after the draft.
Wow.
So he's got one
Debo
player in his starting lineup right now that he drafted. One.
Yeah. Debo. That's crazy.
And he has two more on his bench.
Wow.
3 players on his entire roster that he drafted. Think about that.
He didn't even need to show up for the draft.
That is insane.
Look at Garrett. I mean, Garrett's exactly the opposite. Just tried and true. He's just trying to draft and develop.
Yeah. Letting the scouting department. Now, he doesn't have a single defender or special teamer that he drafted.
Yeah. Huh. Why worry about that?
No, that's pretty typical. Especially
so this is interesting. We'll have to mess around with this in the postseason.
Yeah.
But yeah, so here's what we've got. Share the screen. I went ahead and took a look at the top 3 for each. So we can just do a quick recap and just say who won the regular season at each position. And then past that, I just did a little tab of which owner has the most players in the top 10. So obviously number 1 for regular season was Jalen Hurts, followed by Josh Allen, and then Dak Prescott. How about that for your top 3 quarterbacks of the regular season? And regarding teams with the most in the top 10. So Garrett, Tom, and you all had 2 in the top 10. Ned, myself, Dan, and Sam all had 1 quarterback in the top 10. And unfortunately, Tim didn't have one that cracked the top 10. I think he had Goff and Geno. So there's your quarterbacks.
And I drafted Goff. So
you did draft Goff. Well,
yeah,
bummer.
Should have kept him.
I think the shocker here is Dak. I think honestly, if you had made me guess the 3 starting out the season, I probably would have said Hurts, Allen, Lamar, and Lamar was 4th, I think. So
Lamar, yeah, and that's really just the last 5 or 6 weeks. Honestly, he wasn't playing that well in the first half of the season, and now he's just been absolute lightning in a bottle. So
yeah,
that's 3rd overall with essentially half a season.
Yeah, that's true. Running backs, I think a couple surprises here. Christian McCaffrey, 100-point lead in first place, not undoubtable. Number 1, followed by Raheem Mostert.
102.1 points. That is unbelievable. That's a fourth. That's a fourth of his points.
Yeah.
Let that sink in.
He could he could obviously miss the rest of the season and keep first. It's Raheem Mostert in second.
Raheem Mostert's points is 33% of Raheem Mostert's. I mean, that's just the second overall. I mean, that's anyways. And this isn't the first time Christian McCaffrey has done something like this, right? Like he has a history of being the 1A and everyone else is RB3.
Right.
So
exactly. And then Etienne, how about that? A guy you clearly, you have a history with, right? Yep.
You
can't keep
surprising.
them all.
Can't keep them all. Breece Hall would have loved to keep him. Travis Etienne would have loved to keep him. Can't keep them all.
He's just been an absolute beast for the Jaguars offense this year.
Yeah, he has. And Tank Bigsby, I mean, think about that. That was sort of the buzz in the offseason. Oh, Tank's going to come in and steal carries.
Take his touchdowns. Yeah.
No such thing.
And then, so both you and Tim had 2 running backs in the top 10, and then everybody else had 1. And then, what we'll have to do, I think I made another bold statement once upon a time where I said that Garrett was going to miss the playoffs and have 3 top 15 running backs.
Correct.
I think I did say that. And if you take a look, I have to do some subtraction, obviously, but Pacheco 13th, Kamara 11th, Pollard 9th.
9th? Pollard is 9th?
Yeah. Well, he had a couple big weeks.
Wow. Yeah. So he did it.
So he did it. And top 13, not even top 15, 3 top 13 running backs missing the playoffs. And he's got another, he's got David Montgomery, who's missed a lot of time, 19th.
Yep. Yeah. And that's
3
only
top-
because he missed
4
time.
top-
He was
yeah.
a top
He missed
5 running
5
back
games.
before he left.
He missed 5
Yeah.
games. That's incredible.
Yeah. That's insane. That's never been done before.
No, and it won't ever happen again.
No. Talk about what's never happened before. Go ahead and read your list of wide receivers.
This is crazy. So Tyreek Hill first, CeeDee Lamb second, Keenan Allen third. 2. So you have 3 receivers in the top 10 because you have Stephon Diggs, and you've got the number 1 and the number 2.
Yep.
Oh, and you have the number 1 quarterback, number 1 running back. So I think everybody's going to be stealing your draft strategy at the next draft.
It just fell right into place. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. And I might not win a championship. So it's fantasy is a cruel mistress.
How much does it matter?
You look at these regular season points and you think, oh, this person should win in a landslide. But it's still up in the air, and it's definitely not going to be a landslide.
Tight ends.
Now, I just want to stop. Diggs is number 8, but he has been falling and falling fast, because for the first half of the season he was wide receiver 2 after Tyreek, and now the last 4 weeks 7.9, 5.7, 19, 6.4. So he's been trailing off in a serious way.
He's still getting targets too. It's just I think Josh Allen's just having a hard time getting on the same page with him.
Yeah, and I don't think that the Dallas game is going to be a bounce back game, to be honest.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Stephen Gilmore, however, another player who has not practiced all week due to illness. So we'll keep an eye on that. Yep.
Interesting. All right, tight ends. Hawk, number 1 for Dan. This was close. This is very close. So TJ Hawkinson 1, Kelsey 2. All of these have been surprises for different reasons. And Sam Laporta number 3. What a grab. Wow. He lived up to all the preseason buzz, which is hard to do for a rookie, hard to do for a fantasy player in general, but much less
especially tight end. Tight ends historically do not do well in the rookie season.
No, exactly. And just notably, you and I, the only owners who did not have a top 10 tight end. And I predicted mine, but I
traded mine away.
Away.
The draft strategy was the same for all of the positions. It wasn't. I didn't focus on one position. I went after Darren Waller. I kept George Kittle, but I went after Darren Waller and spent a pretty penny on him. So again, hindsight's 2020. But those two had the potential to be top 10 receivers or top 5 tight ends.
A lot of keepers traded away this year.
Yeah.
So kind of interesting. Real quick IDP flash here. Tom looks like he grabbed the bag here in these, but your linebacker, Aluakan, number 1 linebacker for regular season. Defensive lineman, it was actually a split between TJ Watt and Khalil Mack, with Max Crosby, I will say, just a couple points behind. If he would have gotten that 2-point safety, it would have put him within a point. I'm just going to put that out there. God. And then Jesse Bates, the number 1 defensive back. I wouldn't have guessed that.
No.
But that's fine. And then special teams. How about Dustin Hopkins, a guy that was – I remember I put a bid in for him, but he was unowned for weeks and weeks. He is your number 1 kicker in fantasy this year.
I put a bid on him the week that Ned picked him up too. Yeah.
Popular.
Yeah, crazy.
And Thomas Morstead, the number 1 punter of the year, and the number 1 punter from Hard Knocks.
Congratulations.
Pretty fun sound box. Yeah. All right. So one thing we wanted to talk about here, just to wrap the show up, we have a terrible record when we say that this is going to be a short episode. I'm just going to say that.
It never happens.
It never happens. No. I think we should just briefly talk about some of these early awards, and then I think at some point we should have an episode where we officially knight the MVP. But I think this year the best way to reflect on the fantasy season is going to be us handing out awards for the MVP, offensive and defensive player of the years, and rookies of the year, and then just our favorite offensive and defensive single game effort. So MVP, we talked a little bit about this already, but Christian McCaffrey, I don't know how you deny him MVP in fantasy for another year.
No, I mean, yeah, when you're scoring 100 more points, more than 100 points than the second at that position, that's one thing. But when that position is scoring multiple hundreds of points more than the other positions, there's no way to do it. And obviously I don't want to beat a dead horse, but Thomas, told me once that I'm a Christian McCaffrey injury away from being a bad team. And when you go back and you look at the number one ranked position players that I have at other positions, including a top 4 running back outside of Christian McCaffrey, I think that was a poor statement made by him. And now I've just completely veered off into a tangent that has little to do with Christian McCaffrey being the fantasy MVP this season. But you talk about the trade I'll never forget, right? Like I can't remember a situation in which you take this player that has always overachieved in a horrible offense and just been able to do everything. And then you put him in an offense that is designed specifically for a position that historically they have not used for anyone outside of like a 5th round draft pick. Right. Kyle's dad, Mike, made it famous to draft 6th round running backs, put him into his system. Alfred Morris, but obviously Mike Davis. You could go back to Denver on and on and on, and guys that just Terrell Davis. There's a lot there, and then you put Christian McCaffrey in that offense, and it's been everything that you would think it would be.
And really, all they had to give up to get him, it ended up being an incredible trade. There's nothing that any player can do, obviously, from here on out to jump into MVP consideration, and unless anything changes for next year. This is his trophy to carry.
Yeah, no doubt.
Takes him down. Offensive, defensive player of the year. Some names that come to mind. So Tyreek Hill is. I think he should be the NFL MVP. It's like I'm watching another type of being whenever I watch him play football. It's just incredible. And he's playing through injuries. But just for you on your team, what I look for in an offensive or defensive player of the year is somebody who is just reliable. You don't have to worry about benching him. He's just you can look on to the next slot for making decisions about who to start. So I got Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and it's again another one that's really, really difficult to argue with. Quarterbacks have the ability to be the only other position to get close to running back numbers, and Tyreek Hill has scored more points than Jalen Hurts has this season. So it's remarkable. Yeah, of course, the ankle injury has been something he's been dealing with all season, and hasn't been worse than it is right now. However, he's on pace to get to 2,000, which has been an unattainable goal, and he's closing in on it. Obviously, got 60 points 60 yards while injured last week. So it's crazy. It's crazy that players like this can't be stopped. That that the Dolphins are going to try to get him the ball and get him the ball deep, and he just continues to do it week after week. So it's been fun to watch, and hopefully he's able to play against the Jets this weekend.
Yeah. Defense, selfish pick here, but I put in Max Crosby, even though he's the number 3 defensive lineman. But the injuries he's had to play through, you gave me the stat about the percentage of offensive or defensive snaps he's actually played. But he's obviously a difference maker. And I think as a pass rusher in fantasy, it's hard to be a difference maker and also get the points to show it, because it's oftentimes just quarterback hurries. Kind of like what's going on with Micah Parsons this year, but he also put up the statistics Max did this year, and he never got his 2-point safety. So he's going to be playing to attain that, obviously.
Better. I think that the argument can be made about TJ Watt having missed some games and still be tied with the number 1 overall. I think that position is really important, because it's a position that can score significant. Those top guys score significantly more points than their competition. And so it's a real advantage if you have one of those handful of guys that can score essentially middle of the round linebacker numbers at the defensive lineman position. It's a real advantage. And so TJ Watt, Max Crosby's played in 97% of the Raiders snaps while dealing with a knee injury. I don't know if you saw the picture of his knee when it was a couple weeks ago. It was so swollen. It was wild. So it's remarkable what he's done.
You wrote down Deron Bland. So
Deron Bland is certainly another guy. I mean, think about that. Again, cornerbacks are historically a position that doesn't generate a whole lot of fantasy points, but the way he has gone about his season, scoring on 5 interception returns for touchdowns. It's obviously that's sort of an outlier. It doesn't happen consistently, but he's been able to do it consistently. So that's been a fun player to watch for fantasy this season. He's been remarkable.
Rookies of the year. So this is honestly tougher than it's been in the past. I think we were all ready to anoint Bijan Robinson, and he's certainly in the conversation. But my offensive pick is Kyren Williams because he's the number 8 running back, just period. And he's averaging in the games he's played, he's averaging 30 points a game, which is second to Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. And again, I kept the sticky note for a while, but week 1, I went after Joshua Kelly, Kenneth Gainwell, and one other running back. And I spent $98
$93 on Gainwell.
Right. I think I had $2 left after week 1, and I did not put in any money for Kyren Williams, I believe. So that's been disappointing. That's certainly been disappointing to look back on.
Well, $93 would have gotten you Kyren Williams.
No doubt.
Could you imagine the team that you'd have right now with RB3 or RB2 being Kyren Williams? Yeah. Yeah. I think other names to talk about in this would be, CJ Stroud is a bit of a difference maker, being a keeper. Not really any receivers. I think Sam Laporte is a tight end. Like, it's hard to give tight end offensive rookie there, but he's obviously up there. And then Bijan Robinson, like I said, would probably be my second place vote.
Yeah. They're starting to lean on him.
Defense is a little bit trickier. I would put a vote in on Devin Witherspoon. Like we were talking about earlier, that there's no Sauce Gardner this year. No guy that really stands out, but Devin Witherspoon is averaging 12 points a game. So he's a top 5 DB. I don't know if you have other people that come to mind.
None.
Yeah. Let's close with the last 2 awards that we are kind of thinking about. Single game effort awards. So games that stood out from offensive and defensive perspective. My vote on offense is Devon Achane, week 3, 72 points. I think that was the most points scored this year by any player.
I think so.
200 yards, 2 rush touchdowns, 2 receiving touchdowns, and all on Dan's bench.
Just amazing.
After I dropped him too. I drafted him and dropped him. And then he ends up on another team's bench and has 72 points. Yeah.
Incredible.
My defensive moment is Khalil Mack. 6 sack game in week 4 against the Raiders. And he was a free agent that week.
Gosh. And it was Aiden O'Connell's first start in the NFL.
Right. Yeah, welcome.
And one guy brought him down 6 times.
Yeah.
Do
you know? I got a trivia question. Do you know who has the single game sack record in the NFL? He's a former Kansas City Chief.
Frank Clark.
It's a good guess. Derek Thomas.
Gosh,
seven sacks. So
7 sacks.
Khalil Mack almost broke a record that day. Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. I was just looking at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 5 of the top 10 fantasy players this season. Overall points. So overall points, I have half of the top 5, half of the top 10.
So now this will be really interesting case study in how single player driven is fantasy football, where if you do not win the championship this year and you have half of the top 10, can it be done?
Yeah. And again, as you would assume, the drop off between those 5 players, my next best player is Sam Howell, and then Stephon Diggs, and then Jerome Ford. So I don't know how many players is listed on this first page, but 5 of the top 10, but then overall on the entire page, 8. It's got to be 25 players. No, more than that. So,
yeah.
anyways.
And then it looks like Thomas has 3 of the top 10. Is that right?
Yeah. 1, 2.
Maybe
just
it
2.
did sort. Just 2. Yeah.
Just 2.
Wow. 2 owners with 7 of the top 10 players.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, cool. Any other thoughts? We're just rounding out under an hour. It's doable.
Gosh, I'm just fingers crossed. It's I have a pit of despair just brewing in my gut, but hopefully we can again 2 games tonight. So we'll watch those. I don't think that they have a whole lot of implications for my matchup with Dan. I've got
3 games today. Actually, I didn't realize we had a full slate.
3
yeah,
games?
we've got an early, a mid, and a late game. So we've got Minnesota at Cincy. Certainly some players there for Dan, right? That kicks off here in about an hour and a half. We've got the Steelers at the Colts. Also, we got the Zach Moss game there, and Pittman game, and then we've got tonight we've got Denver at Detroit, and that's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, it's just some players in that one. Javonte Williams, I think, is starting in the consolation ladder at Sam Laporta.
Correct.
So some players they go. So we got we've got a nice slate here today, and then a full game tomorrow, full set of games tomorrow, and then after that we're gonna know who our championship teams are.
Gosh. And if it's Dan and if it's Dan and Tim, holy smokes, the 2 teams that I talk the most trash about all year long.
You're lucky they don't come on this podcast, or else
my gosh,
it would be an hour of airing receipts.
Well, I can tell you this: I'm not recording another episode if that's the matchup. I'm going to take my ball and I'm going to go home.
Yeah, right.
You might have to find a different co-host for the finals.
That's great. Cool.
All right,
well,
Keifer.
Good luck to you this week. We will have to talk about scheduling for the next episode. I'll be in Texas.
Okay.
But we'll make it happen. It's going to be a fun one.
Okay. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All righty.
All right, man.
See you next.